Hello, STT 315. This is Recitation 2, and today we are going to go over different sampling methods. So our learning objectives for this recitation is identifying sampling designs or methods. And so we have simple random sampling, we have stratified random sampling, cluster random sampling, systematic random sampling, and convenience sampling. And we're going to have different scenarios, and with each scenario, we're going to identify the sampling method used in each scenario. So again, the different scenarios or the different sampling methods that we have are simple random sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling, systematic sampling, convenience sampling. So I'll read through each scenario and then talk about why the associated sampling method is the correct one. So let's get started. So here we have a marketing expert at MTV is planning a survey in which 500 people will be randomly selected from each age group of 10 to 19, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, and 50 to 59. So here, this would be an example of stratified random sampling because we are taking our total people and then dividing it into different strata or groups and then sampling from those groups. So our different groups that we have are different age groups. So that would be, we have 5 different age groups. We have 10 to 19, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, and 50 to 59. So these 500 people are going to be randomly selected from each group. So that's why it's stratified random sampling. We have different strata and we're randomly selecting people from each strata. An inspector for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration obtains all vitamin pills produced in an hour at the health supply company. She thoroughly mixes them, then scoops a sample of 10 pills that are to be tested for the exact amount of vitamin content. So this would be an example of simple random sampling because if I were to come up with another example of simple random sampling, what I like thinking of is kind of drawing out of a hat where you put everything in one bin or one hat or a bag and you shuffle them around, you shake the bag, and then you pull out of the bag. And that's kind of what's happening here in the simple random sample where they are obtaining all of the vitamin pills produced and then in an hour, and then they're thoroughly mixing them, and then they're randomly randomly scooping out 10 pills, and those are what's tested. So that's why that's a simple random sample. Motivated by a student who died from binge drinking, the administration at a university conducts a study of student drinking by randomly selecting 10 different classes being taught this semester and interviewing all the students in each of those classes. So this would be an example of cluster sampling. And how I kind of remember cluster sampling is if you think of like, well, before I go into an example, so the reason why it's cluster sampling is because you're selecting the different classes, selecting like the 10 different classes, and then interviewing all of the students in each of those classes. And so a way that I like to remember cluster sampling is like during holiday time when you get your let's say someone gifts you with a like peanut butter cluster, granola cluster, whatever. Let's say you're taking it out of the bag. Let's say you have a bag of clusters or whatever. You're taking it out and you're having that whole chunk of out of the cluster. It has maybe multiple peanuts, or you eat the whole cluster. You eat all of the components of the cluster. So that's kind of how I remember cluster sampling is we're taking these 10 different classes, and with each class, you're interviewing all of the students. So I guess in my example, all the students would be like all the peanuts in the cluster, peanut brittle cluster or something. Okay, a finance professor surveyed all of his students to obtain sample data consisting of the number of credit cards students possess. So this is an example of convenience sampling, and convenience sampling is basically getting a sample from what's convenient. So here he was a finance professor, and it was convenient for him to survey all of his students. So this is an example of convenience sampling. All right, task 2. So here we have San Francisco employees. So Damien works for the mayor of San Francisco. The mayor has asked Damien to survey city employees to determine their thoughts on how the city is handling remote work and telecommuting in recent years. Damien obtains a numbered list of all 80,085 city employees and considers several different sampling scenarios. Identify the type of sample Damien is considering in each scenario, and we have the same scenarios we had earlier, which is we're going to identify if it's a simple random sample, stratified sample, cluster sample, systematic sample, or convenient sample. So there are 6 large organization groups within the city employee system. Damien decides to randomly select 100 employees from each of the organization groups to be in the sample. So here we have a stratified sample because we first separate into organization groups, so into groups or into strata, and then from those groups we're going to randomly select so many out of those groups. So here we're randomly selecting 100 employees from each of those groups. So that's why it's stratified sample. Damien uses a random number generator to select a number between 1 and 134 and gets the number 38. He selects the 38th person on the list and then every 134th person after that until he gets to 600 employees for a sample. So this example would be a systematic sample. So usually systematic sample is you're going to first randomly select a number. So you could either use a random number generator or, pick a number out of a hat. But anyways, you're going to randomly select a number, and then if you have everything like everyone in a list, then you're going to pick the kth person in that list. So here, the random number he first got was 38, so he selects the 38th person on the list. Then every kth person in this example, it's 134th person after that. So here it's very systematic, so it's a systematic sample. Damien uses statistical software to randomly choose 600 numbers between 1 and 80,085, then chooses the corresponding employees from the employee list to be in the sample. So this is an example of a simple random sampling. Essentially what the statistical software is doing is basically putting all of the employees in a hat and then choosing the employees randomly. But here, obviously, the random software, does this all by computing. But, okay. Next, the employee list Damien obtains also lists the job title of each employee. Damien sees that there are 1,360 different job titles. He randomly selects 6 of those job titles, then surveys every employee with any of those 6 job titles. So this is an example of a cluster sample. So here he is randomly selecting selects the 6 job titles, but then for each job title, he's basically surveying all the employees that are under that job title. So like I said, with my previous example and like a peanut brittle cluster or something, when you grab a cluster, you're getting all of the little peanuts in that cluster. So here he's getting all the employees that are under that job title for the 6 job titles that were randomly selected. So that's why this is a cluster sample. Damien puts a link to the survey on the San Francisco employee website and uses the first 600 respondents to survey for his sample. So this is an example of a convenience sample because it's convenient to just use the first 600 respondents of the survey opposed to, you know, maybe waiting for more respondents and having a different sampling approach or something. Here, it's convenient to just put a link to the survey on the employee website and then just using the first 600 respondents.